Ryan adjusted his tie for the 5th time since entering the grand chamber. The room was alive with shimmering hues, as Solarians, their feathered crests vibrant and towering, filled the space. He stood out like a sore thumb, an awkward human in a sea of alien elegance. His heart raced as he approached the Solarian Empress, Vrissa, her plumage a dazzling cascade of iridescent gold and blue. He cleared his throat. "Your Majesty, it's an honor to meet you. Your, feathers are magnificent." The room fell silent. Several Solarians gasped, their feathers twitching in what Ryan assumed was a mix of shock and amusement. He noticed a nearby dignitary stifling a laugh. Vrissa, seated on her elevated throne, tilted her head, a sly smile spreading across her face. "Well," she said, her voice smooth and laced with amusement, "it's not every day a human offers such bold praise. Are all humans this easy to ruffle? Or am I special?" Ryan blinked, the double meaning hitting him like a freight train. "Oh, no, I didn't mean, I wasn't implying, your feathers are just, culturally," he groaned inwardly. "Relax, human," Vrissa interrupted, her smile growing. "I'm merely teasing. Though, your compliment carries a certain weight in our culture." Ryan frowned. "Weight?" The chamber erupted into hushed whispers as one of the Solarian advisors leaned over to whisper into his ear. "You've just declared interest in Her Majesty. Publicly." Ryan's jaw dropped. "Interest? Wait, no. That's not what He turned back to Vrissa, who was watching him with the kind of bemusement one reserves for a particularly clumsy bird. "Let's clarify this," he stammered. "I'm here on a diplomatic mission, not a courtship mission." "But you're here, standing before me," Vrissa replied, rising from her throne. She towered over him, her feathers catching the light in an almost hypnotic display. "And you've made a statement, loud and clear. What shall I do with this declaration of yours?" Ryan felt heat crawl up his neck. He opened his mouth to respond, but Vrissa raised a hand, silencing him. "Humans are fascinating. You stumble into things so easily." She turned to her court. "What do you think? Should we allow this human to retract his statement, or hold him to it?" The room erupted in laughter and chatter, with some Solarians calling for him to honor the supposed declaration. Others suggested testing him to see if he was worthy. Ryan tried to interject but quickly realized he was being swept into a game he didn't understand. "This isn't happening," he muttered under his breath. "I just wanted to talk trade agreements, not whatever this is." Vrissa stepped closer, her feathers brushing against his shoulder. "You seem flustered." "Don't worry, human. I find your kind's earnestness quite endearing." Her lips quirked into a teasing grin. "Let's see if you can handle the consequences of your words. After all, words matter here." Ryan's mind raced as he tried to figure a way out of the situation without offending the Empress, or causing an intergalactic incident. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," he said, forcing a smile. "On Earth, compliments are just compliments." "Interesting," Vrissa replied, clearly unconvinced. "But here, compliments carry intent. And intent must be followed by action." "Action?" Ryan asked, his voice cracking slightly. She smirked, leaning in close enough that he could see the fine details of her feathers. "Yes, human. Action. Let's see if you're truly as bold as your words suggest." The room erupted into cheers as Vrissa gestured for the festivities to begin. Ryan was whisked away by 2 Solarian guards, their crests fluttering in what he could only assume was amusement. As they led him to a private chamber, one of them chuckled. "Good luck, human," the guard said. "You'll need it." Ryan sighed, realizing that his mission had just taken a bizarre and unexpectedly personal turn. The chamber buzzed with excitement as Ryan found himself standing on a raised platform alongside a lineup of alien contestants. To his left, a towering insectoid with glittering chitin clicked its mandibles, and to his right, a gelatinous being quivered and burbled in what might have been anticipation. Ryan, meanwhile, stood frozen, his tie slightly askew, wondering how he had been roped into this absurd courtship contest. Vrissa, perched elegantly on a throne flanked by advisors, looked entirely too amused by the situation. She addressed the crowd, her voice carrying over the din as is tradition. Suitors must prove their worth. Our newest participant, her gaze landed squarely on Ryan, who gave an awkward wave. May struggle to adapt, but I trust he'll bring something unique to the competition. Ryan leaned toward the insectoid beside him. Do you have any idea what's going on? He whispered. The creature clicked its mandibles again. Your doom, probably. Before Ryan could respond, the first challenge was announced: feather grooming elegance. A Solarian attendant approached with what looked like an ornate grooming kit. The other contestants stepped forward confidently, selecting their tools with practiced precision. Ryan, on the other hand, stared blankly at the kit. You're joking, he muttered. Vrissa's voice rang out, teasing. Having trouble already, human? Surely you've groomed before. Ryan fumbled with the tools, picking up something resembling a glittery comb. He glanced at the alien contestants, who were meticulously grooming artificial feathers with an almost artistic flair. Desperately improvising, he began combing his hair instead, adding an exaggerated flourish with every stroke. The crowd erupted into laughter, and Vrissa's eyes sparkled with amusement. An unconventional approach, she said, trying not to laugh. But I suppose it's endearing. Despite the laughter, Ryan noticed some Solarians nodding in approval, as if his ridiculous display had a certain charm. When the results were announced, he somehow managed to score higher than the gelatinous being, which had accidentally absorbed its grooming tools. The next challenge was announced: the Dance of Galactic Grace. A Solarian orchestra struck up a sweeping melody, and the contestants took to the stage one by one, performing intricate dances that combined fluid movement with dramatic feather displays. Ryan watched in horror as the insectoid executed a flawless routine, its mandibles clacking rhythmically in time with the music. When his turn came, he hesitated, then decided to wing it, literally. He flailed his arms in what he hoped looked like interpretive dance, but probably resembled a malfunctioning robot. The audience howled with laughter, and even Vrissa covered her mouth to stifle a giggle. By the end of his performance, Ryan was out of breath but strangely triumphant. Bold, Vrissa said when he returned to the lineup. I admire your commitment. As the contest continued, Ryan began to notice a shift. The other contestants, initially dismissive of him, started to view him as an unpredictable wild card. His human creativity, or perhaps his sheer audacity, seemed to win over parts of the crowd. One challenge required crafting a decorative headpiece from alien materials. While others created intricate designs using feathers, jewels, and glowing orbs, Ryan found a spool of duct tape in his jacket pocket. He constructed something resembling a bird's nest, complete with random shiny objects he scavenged from nearby. When he presented it, the crowd fell silent. Vrissa studied the headpiece with a bemused expression before declaring, ingenious in its simplicity. Truly, no one would have thought of this unique design. Ryan couldn't tell if she was mocking him or genuinely impressed, but he took the applause as a win. Throughout the contest, Vrissa's teasing became more pointed. During a challenge involving alien poetry, Ryan inadvertently composed a piece that sounded like a risque proposition in Solarian culture. Vrissa leaned forward, her eyes gleaming. Such passion in your words, human. Is this how Earthlings woo their mates? Ryan flushed, stammering an apology, which only made the crowd laugh harder. By the end of the day, Ryan was exhausted but still standing. Somehow, he had survived the courtship contest's opening rounds. As he was led off the platform, one of the Solarian advisors clapped him on the back. You've certainly made an impression, the advisor said. Yeah, I'm sure, Ryan muttered. Probably not the one I wanted. In the distance, Vrissa watched him with a curious expression, a small smile playing on her lips. Ryan sat at the negotiation table, flanked by a delegation of Earth representatives and surrounded by alien dignitaries from various species. The air was thick with tension as he tried to focus on the trade agreements at hand, but the memory of the courtship contest loomed in his mind. Every time he glanced at Vrissa, seated across from him, her amused smirk made it impossible to concentrate. Our trade proposal includes an exchange of technological advancements, Ryan began, keeping his tone measured. We believe a partnership between Earth and the Solarian Empire could. Vrissa raised a hand, cutting him off. Partnership, you say? Are you speaking of trade or something deeper? Her words hung in the air, laced with double meaning. The other alien dignitaries exchanged glances, their crests and antennae shifting in intrigue. Ryan flushed, fumbling with his notes. I meant trade partnerships, he clarified quickly, his voice cracking slightly. Strictly professional. Strictly? Vrissa tilted her head, her feathers shimmering as her smile widened. I find humans' choice of words fascinating. So careful, yet so easily misunderstood. The reptilian dignitary to Vrissa's left leaned forward, his scaly tail swishing. If this human is open to partnerships, I would propose an alliance with my people as well. Ryan nodded, grateful for the shift in focus. That's exactly what we're here to discuss. Mutual. But, the reptilian interrupted, on my world, partnerships are sealed with a gesture of sincerity. A physical bond. What kind of gesture? Ryan asked, cautiously optimistic. The reptilian grinned, baring sharp teeth. A tail entwining. Ryan blinked. I don't have a tail. The dignitary frowned, his forked tongue flicking. Then how do humans seal bonds? With those, strange, fleshy appendages? Before Ryan could respond, Vrissa interjected. Perhaps we should demonstrate a Solarian tradition instead. Ryan, would you care to participate? No, that's really not necessary, he said quickly, his hands raised in defense. Nonsense, she replied, standing gracefully. It's important to honor cultural practices. Before he could protest further, Vrissa stepped behind him, placing her hands lightly on his shoulders. He froze as she leaned down, her feathers brushing against his ear. Relax, human, she whispered. You're doing fine. The room erupted into murmurs as Vrissa demonstrated a traditional Solarian gesture, a subtle touch of feathers to signify goodwill. To Ryan, it felt more like an ambush. As soon as she stepped back, another dignitary spoke up. If humans are so adaptable, perhaps they would entertain joining our union as well. Ryan groaned inwardly. I think we're getting off topic here. Let's focus on the trade terms. But the dignitaries were already debating among themselves, discussing how best to secure Earth's cooperation. One suggested a symbolic exchange of artifacts, while another proposed a joint military alliance. The gelatinous alien from the courtship contest burbled, drawing attention. If the human is offering partnerships, I claim first right of proposal. Ryan threw up his hands. I'm not offering myself. This is a trade negotiation. The room fell silent for a moment before bursting into laughter. Even Vrissa couldn't suppress her chuckle. Ryan buried his face in his hands, muttering, "This is not how diplomacy works." After the laughter subsided, Vrissa raised a hand, silencing the room. Enough teasing. Let us return to the matter at hand. She turned to Ryan, her tone softening slightly. I must admit, you've handled this chaos better than I expected. Thanks, he said flatly, not sure if it was a compliment. Your creativity and resilience are impressive, she continued. Perhaps we could learn more from humans than I anticipated. The subtle shift in her tone caught Ryan off guard. For a moment, she seemed genuine, her teasing smile replaced by something softer. But before he could respond, another dignitary interrupted. If I may, the reptilian said, I would propose a more binding agreement between our people. Perhaps the human could serve as a liaison. Ryan winced. Define liaison. The dignitary's grin widened. A representative who immerses themselves fully in our culture. A close relationship. Absolutely not, Ryan said firmly, shaking his head. Vrissa's laughter broke the tension. Poor Ryan, she said, her feathers fluttering in amusement. You seem to attract offers wherever you go. Yeah, lucky me, he muttered. As the meeting adjourned, Ryan lingered near the exit, relieved to escape the chaos. But before he could leave, Vrissa approached, her expression unreadable. "You handled yourself well," she said, her tone softer than before. "I think well is a stretch," he replied, running a hand through his hair. She chuckled, the sound surprisingly warm. "Perhaps. But you've earned my respect, human. And my curiosity." He met her gaze, unsure how to respond. For the first time, her teasing seemed less like a game and more like a genuine acknowledgement. "Thanks," he said awkwardly. Vrissa stepped closer, her feathers brushing his arm. "Until next time, Ryan. I look forward to seeing what trouble you cause next." With that, she turned and walked away, leaving him to wonder if he had just survived another disaster, or stepped into a new one entirely. The aftermath of the negotiation was a whirlwind. Ryan found himself walking through the Solarian Palace halls, accompanied by an overly enthusiastic advisor who was explaining the finer points of Solarian cultural etiquette. His head was still spinning from everything that had transpired, and the idea of being misunderstood yet again filled him with dread. Feather gestures, eye movements, tone shifts, the advisor droned on. "It's all very intuitive once you understand the layers." "Yeah, sure, intuitive," Ryan muttered. His comm device buzzed, and he glanced down at the screen to see a message from Earth Command. "Status update requested. Trade agreement progress?" He sighed, typing back a vague response, "Progressing. Complications remain." As he rounded a corner, he nearly collided with Vrissa, who seemed to have been waiting for him. Her feathers flared slightly, catching the light, and she smiled in that infuriatingly knowing way she always did. "Ryan," she said smoothly. "Escaping so soon?" He pocketed his comm device. "Not escaping, just regrouping." "Regrouping," she repeated, her tone dripping with amusement. "Is that what humans call running away these days?" He rolled his eyes, already bracing for whatever verbal trap she was about to spring. "What do you need, Vrissa?" She gestured for him to follow her, leading him down a quieter corridor. The atmosphere shifted as the noise of the palace faded, leaving only the soft rustle of her feathers and the faint hum of the energy lights above. "I wanted to speak with you privately," she said, her tone losing some of its teasing edge. "Is this where you tell me I've offended another cultural tradition without realizing it?" he asked, half joking. She chuckled, shaking her head. "No, though you do have a talent for that. I wanted to thank you." Ryan blinked, caught off guard. "Thank me? For what?" "For being honest," she said simply. "Even when you're out of your depth, you don't hide behind pretense. It's refreshing." He raised an eyebrow. "You're thanking me for being clueless?" "Not clueless," she corrected. "Authentic. You don't see it, do you? How much your sincerity stands out here." He wasn't sure how to respond to that, so he opted for humor. "Well, if that's all it takes to impress, I should have skipped the tie." She laughed, the sound softer than usual. "It's not just that. You're different. Most who come here are desperate to curry favor or prove themselves. You, on the other hand, stumble into situations and somehow make them work. It's maddening, really." "Glad to know I'm maddening," he said with a smirk. She stopped walking, turning to face him fully. For once, her expression was serious, her golden eyes studying him closely. "You're more than that, Ryan. You're interesting." He felt his face heat under her gaze. "Thanks, I guess." "You guess," she echoed, her feathers ruffling slightly. Typical human humility. Before he could respond, an alert echoed through the palace, the sound sharp and urgent. Vrissa's expression shifted instantly, her posture straightening. "What's happening?" Ryan asked, his own instincts kicking in. "An unauthorized ship has entered Solarian airspace," she said, her voice tight. "Follow me." They rushed to the control room, where a holographic display showed the intruding vessel. It was massive, its dark hold bristling with weapons. Ryan's stomach dropped as he recognized the insignia. Pirates, he said grimly. They've been raiding outer colonies for months. They won't get far here, Vrissa said, her tone cold. She began issuing orders to her guards, her commanding presence a stark contrast to the playful demeanor she usually wore. Ryan watched her work, impressed despite himself. But as the situation escalated, he realized something: the pirates weren't retreating. If anything, they seemed to be preparing for an all-out assault. Vrissa, he said, stepping closer. They're not here for a quick raid. They're targeting you. Her gaze flicked to him, sharp and assessing. And you know this how? Because it's what I do, he said bluntly. Take out the leader, throw the whole system into chaos. She considered his words, then nodded. Then we'll ensure they don't get the chance. As the palace defenses activated, Ryan found himself drawn into the chaos. He wasn't a soldier, but his experience as a diplomat in high-stakes situations gave him a knack for quick thinking. He worked alongside Vrissa, coordinating efforts and offering insights into human tactics that seemed to catch the pirates off guard. At one point, a guard handed him a weapon, and he hesitated only briefly before taking it. When a group of pirates breached the outer defenses, he found himself standing shoulder to shoulder with Vrissa, the two of them fending off attackers in a flurry of plasma fire and feathered strikes. By the time the dust settled, the pirates had been driven back, their ship retreating into the void. Ryan leaned against a wall, catching his breath as the adrenaline began to wear off. You fought well, Vrissa said, her feathers still slightly ruffled from the battle. You too, he replied, offering her a tired grin. She stepped closer, her expression unreadable. Perhaps I underestimated you, Ryan. You're more capable than you let on. High praise coming from you, he said, his tone light despite the weight of the moment. She smiled faintly, but there was a softness in her gaze that hadn't been there before. Don't let it go to your head. As the palace began to return to normal, Ryan realized something had shifted between them. Vrissa's teasing was still there, but it felt less like a game and more like an invitation. For the first time, he wondered if maybe, just maybe, he was starting to understand her world, and his place in it.